Representative Rodney, we heard the state quarterly revenue forecast today. What did we find out?
We're in the 66th day of the session, about 2/3 of the way through. The revenue forecast came out today. It was a little bit better than expected. I think the projections are that we're still going to be about roughly $20 million below the forecast. Again, the biennial forecast is a $33 billion budget. So we're about 20 million below that, which means that our economy is improving. We're not out of the woods by any means, and we still have, I think, a long ways to go in terms of economic recovery to get to a point where we should be in terms of our economic output and our job creation and getting Washingtonians back to work again.
We just reached an important cutoff point, and we're going to start hearing budgets proposed. What are you looking for in a budget that you would support?
Well, that's a great question. You know, just last week on Thursday, the House Republican Caucus put out our Fund Education First budget, which fully funds K-12 education, adds almost $1 billion in additional revenue to K-12 education without raising taxes. That's a real key priority for me, is to pass a sustainable budget within existing revenues that does not raise taxes, that also honors and complies with the McCleary decision that was handed down last spring, which indicated that we don't fully fund our K-12 education system. Now, given that revenue forecast, and it wasn't as promising as we had hoped, now is not the time to raise taxes. The 2/3 supermajority requirement was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court recently. I disagree with that decision wholeheartedly. I think it's the people's prerogative to be able to set that 2/3 supermajority requirement for any new tax increases. I'm very concerned that the majority Democrats here in the House are going to now use that as a green light, so to speak, to raise all kinds of taxes, and that's only going to impair our economic recovery.
When we last spoke, there were a number of bills dealing with gun control that were going through judiciary. Tell me about the result of some of those bills.
Absolutely. House Bill 1588 was a very controversial bill that we were able to defeat in the House. 1588 would have required universal background checks for all private firearms transactions, and I was not supportive of that from the get-go. A lot of concerns about impairing our Second Amendment rights. The bill is unenforceable as it was written. It would impose a de facto statewide registration scheme on all firearms transactions, which again I'm very concerned about. And it would have drained law enforcement resources away from crime prevention and deterrence to enforcing what is an unenforceable bill. So I'm very glad to be able to report that we were able to defeat that bill. There are other ways that we can maintain or get to the problem of keeping guns out of the hands of convicted felons, those who've been adjudicated as mentally incompetent, and those who are subject to various protection orders. We all agree that should be the policy and that should be the goal. There are other ways to do that, more effective ways to do that, than imposing an onerous background check requirement on all law-abiding citizens in the state of Washington.
So overall, you feel good about protecting the Second Amendment rights of gun holders in our state?
Absolutely, and one of the things that I think that will come from this session is a renewed respect for the freedoms in our constitutional scheme.